Alright, let's just address the elephant in the room straight away. Yes, I'm wearing a vest. It's like 52 million degrees here in the UK, and I sweat when it's -5 degrees, so what else am I meant to do? And I understand if I saw me, I'd be like, that guy is such a bored asshole. Also, the other elephant in the room is that the global situation has now massively just decimated wrestling, and I can't handle 2020 anymore. It's ruining me. Where did my hair go? It all fell out. But thankfully we now have the next 15 to 20 minutes or so to just have some fun, to forget about that as we take the finger of power, something I made up. It's just a hand, it's nothing normal. You've got one, I've got one, we've all got one, and we give the good bits an up and we give the bad bits the down, and here we're doing that for AEW Dynamite. Let's up those downs. Dynamite started with a Lumberjack match, and I don't think AEW has used that stipulation to date, hence why Excalibur was explaining the rules before it kicked off. And the reason this makes me feel all fuzzy-wuzzy is I'm like, I wonder how All Elite Wrestling is actually going to present this to us. And it was exactly the same as usual, but I liked the fact I had this feeling to begin with. So yeah, it was just a bunch of dudes on the outside, and when somebody got thrown out there, they all jumped them and beat them up like they were trying to steal their money. But I'm giving it up. And it was Luchasaurus versus Wardlow, which also kicked the AEW stereotype right in the balls, because you hear that criticism online all the time. It's just a bunch of small guys flying around. Well, here we had a bunch of big guys, I think they're like 6'4", and they're jacked, and they were also flying around like beautiful birds. It made me cry. I can't even get up in the morning without going, and here they were just soaring like eagles. The craziest bit that I do want to point out is that Luchasaurus basically did his own version of the Spanish Fly. How is Luchasaurus doing a Spanish Fly? I was so impressed by this. I just got my phone and I texted every single person in my phone book going, oh my gosh, did you see this? And a lot of people I'm no longer friends with and ex-girlfriends, they were like, why are you telling me this? Go away. They were right. For some reason, the Lumberjacks got upset about something at some point, so they all started having a big brawl, and Wardlow took that as the opportunity to grab Brandon Cutler and just throw him into this pack, and then he did the same with Marco Stunt. Luchasaurus then felt left out. He went, okay, and from the stage, he did a shooting star press onto this crew. Everybody in All Elite Wrestling is both amazing and nuts. I do have to say that some elements here were a little bit ridiculous. I suppose you do not get disqualifications in a Lumberjack match, but really at one point it was just 35 to 40 people having a big fight. And I knew shenanigans were coming. I could smell it, and of course it came in the form of MJF. He decided to jump on the apron when Luchasaurus and Wardlow were back in the ring. That distracted the ref because referees in All Elite Wrestling are really, really stupid. Wardlow then whammed Luchasaurus in the testicles, which goes to show that dinosaurs did have groinal things, in case you were interested, and then he hit the F10 and he got the 1, 2, 3. That did mean, however, that Luchasaurus, the last dinosaur, he's my friend, and a whole lot more, lost. And I was really sad because I can't even remember the last time I saw Luchasaurus in a one-on-one match, so in the world of kayfabe, it gets a dino down. Also, that little rhyme there was a lyric from the cartoon you may remember from the 90s entitled Denver and the Last Dinosaur, and whoever wrote that really should have thought about what they had put down on paper. Everyone started kicking off afterwards, especially Maxwell Jacob Freeman, who went after Jungle Boy because those two hate each other, and it turns out at the Fyter Fest, we are gonna get the the Jurassic Express every damn time versus MJF and Wardlow, and I'm okay with that. We had a Taz video next where he explained why some of Brian Cage's moves are so dangerous and terrifying, and I decided that somebody should do this with a surprise roll-up. Because you could be all like, when you're in a state of shock, usually following some kind of distraction, and somebody grabs you by the undercarriage, the weight of their shoulders, pushing your shoulders down, will be too much to bear, and you will be devastated. Nice. Britt Baker was also passing notes to Tony Schiavone throughout all of this, and Britt Baker is just the best. She wants to know why Tony is such a crappy friend. She wants to know why Luchasaurus has a weird tongue. Britt Baker is just entertaining every single week. Women's Champion Shida was then in action next, and she was taking on Red Velvet, and poor Red Velvet never stood a chance. She got kneed in the face, she got Falcon Arrowed, and that was literally it. She lost. It was, of course, just a way to further the feud between Shida and Penelope Ford, who was at ringside with Kip Sabian. I mean, even before this match, Penelope Ford just popped Shida in the face. So afterwards, Shida was like, well, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So she went over there, and she popped Penelope forward in the face. Still think we could do a little more with these two and maybe add some depth to the story, but this was fine, this was okay, and we don't crap on okay, it can have an up. We had some content away from Daily's Place after this, and I think more companies should strive to do this because it just changes up the pacing, and my eyes enjoy it because it's a little bit different. It was the press conference to build up the TNT Championship match at Fyter Fest between Cody and Jake Hager, and it is getting it up. It did feel very UFC, meaning I instantly enjoyed it because I've watched a ton of those, and we started with Arn Anderson letting us know he has lit a fire underneath Cody, which is why he said everything he said last week. Jake Hager wasn't at the press conference at this time, and Arn wasn't surprised. He said, look, he's a warrior, he's a tough guy, but he has no heart. And I hope Anderson doesn't mean that literally, because if he does, we ain't getting that match. Cody then took over and started to explain how much he loves professional wrestling and how important the TNT Championship is. I mean, look at Ricky Starks. Ricky Starks had his opportunity 7 days ago, and now he's employed by the company. What a turnaround that was. He then let us know that he loved the taste of his own blood. So maybe we're teasing some kind of vampire angle. That's a joke for the people in comments that always miss that stuff and it goes over their heads. But ultimately, this was Cody letting us know that this belt means the world to him, as does wrestling. No one is going to take it away. It was at this point that Hager thought that he would make his appearance, and he just strolled up like he couldn't give two hoots, and we did the whole photo pose down thing until Jake decided to put his fist right on Cody's jaw. That meant the two looked at each other like they were going to brawl, but no punches were thrown, because instead Catalina, who is Jake Hager's wife, who had also come, threw water on Cody's face. When it hit him, it's like he was a witch. It's like, I'm burning, I'm burning. But it wasn't, it was just some water. But understandably, he was very pissed off. We will see these two fight in 1 week's time. We then had another vignette with Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss, letting us know where they are in their lives and why they've decided to team. These are a bit like mini movies. I'm giving it an up. It started with Kiss trying to build up Janela's confidence because he feels a little bit lost when they pulled into a gas station to obviously get some gas. Then some assholes basically tried to commandeer their vehicle, so the two fought them off, and you were like, wow, look at them blossoming, look at them coming together. I hope they have all the success in the world. So it's basically just two human beings trying to back the other one up. That is a nice little tale. I can understand that. We should do more with these, and I suppose that's why these videos exist to begin with. It was then time for their first match too, and very interestingly, they were taking on the pairing of Brody Lee and Colt Cabana. So straight away I sat there and I went, how are AEW gonna get out of this? Because we've already established the Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss story, but obviously there's also a story between the Dark Order, Colt Cabana, and Brody Lee. Now the commentators made it very clear that Colt has not made any decisions as of yet, and that last week on Dynamite the envelope was a contract. So apparently when you join a cult, you have to sign your name on a piece of paper, but I guess you want to keep things legal. But look how much we got going on here. It was a pretty even contest too, with the determining factor coming in the form of the Dark Order's minions. They just run around causing a nuisance, especially Alex Ryan Reynolds and Long John Silver. At one point, Sonny Kiss had to dive into them because they wouldn't calm down, they wouldn't leave good alone. This, however, was also the reason the good guys lost, because Joey Janela tried to dive onto Brody Lee, he caught him, threw him into a barricade, and then slammed Sonny Kiss with the discus lariat, and you know what he did then? He looked at Colt Cabana, who was the legal man, and said, Colt, why don't you take the pin? Why don't you get a win? You haven't won in a very long time. And that's what happened, and that's what Colt wanted, and you could just see how happy he was in the face. This is a very good story, I like it up. Lee raised Cabana's hand in the air and the two left together, and there's more to come later, when all of a sudden, the Murder Hawk returned. That's right, Lance Archer was here, and he absolutely wrecked Sonny Kiss, and he absolutely wrecked Joey Janela. Shit. Jake Roberts tried to get him to back off because this was all too much, and while I was happy to see Lance Archer back in an aggressive role, I also think maybe he should have gone after someone else. I had invested in Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss because I really enjoyed their little videos, and then 10 minutes later, they've lost one of their first matches, and they've basically been killed. And also, what do we do now? It is going to be Joey Janela versus Lance Archer at Fyter Fest, but in no way is Joey Janela going to win that, and even if you do a handicap match, I still think you've got to give it to Lance Archer, so all of a sudden these two are just racking up the L's. I would have done something different here, just my personal opinion is getting it down. I do always appreciate AEW listening to fans though, because we just had a little segment here showing us what had happened on Dark the previous evening, specifically Pineapple Pete getting punched in the face with a loaded glove, courtesy of Sean Spears. So, you know, we're carrying on with that, we're sprinkling the seeds. Really, we should all be watching AEW Dark. FTR then took on SCU in an MATCH And this is how you do tag team wrestling, my word. Give it up. This was like something you would have seen back in the territory days, and while there was a little bit of goo goo gaga in the sense that everyone was trying to distract the ref at some point or another, it was so clear what each team's priority was. They wanted to win, and they were going to win however they could. From there, it was just awesome, and it's one of these matches where I can't go through little things that happened, because I'd have to go through every single thing, and we'd be here all day. Just know it had great pace, it was hard hitting, these lot are brilliant, it was good. It was a blind tag of all things that got the better of Kazarian and Daniels too. Christopher had no idea that Wheeler had tagged himself in. That allowed FTR to hit the Goodnight Express, which is still just the most comforting finisher name in all of wrestling. FTR get another win. It's surely everything that happened after this, though, that sent the internet wrestling community into meltdown. Because as FTR were cutting a promo, and they were like saying, we're the good guys, and we're the bad guys, and we're the good guys over there, and we're the other guys, they're essentially every single guys there are on the planet, they got interrupted by the Butcher and the Blade, who were playing around with their vehicle. However, they also got interrupted by the returning Lucha Brothers, as well as the Young Bucks. And do you know what we're getting at Fyter Fest? An 8-man tag match between all of these teams. How are we going to be able to handle it? All of this finished with Pentagon and Phoenix hitting their package pile driver double foot stop thing onto FTR, and then they committed Grand Theft Auto alongside Butcher and the Blade, because they did indeed get in FTR's car and they just drove off. It was drawing all of this when the Young Bucks did come out there to try and make the save, but again, Fyter Fest, 8-man tag, don't you tell me you don't want it. My biggest concern too is how are FTR gonna get home now? They got no ride. Britt Baker was also passing more notes to Tony Schiavone throughout all this, saying that FTR can GTFO, you know what that means, because they ignored her when they were making their entrance. It's a round of applause for Britt Baker, and also I always forget to do this, give her the SVP, Simon's Most Valuable Player Award. She's just great. We then got a couple of hype videos for some of the matches that are going down at Fyter Fest, and these were so well done, especially the package highlighting the best friends taking on Hangman Page and Kenny Omega for the AEW Tag Team titles. Now this is a little bit of hyperbole, but I can't remember the last video that was both funny and serious, but balanced that line perfectly. Some of the lines coming out of people's mouths here were genuinely like, that's really good, but you also knew they were taking these tag team titles seriously. This was absolutely fabu-oodalally. Switch to one with Jon Moxley, where he was saying that in a different life he could see him and Brian Cage being friends, but they're not friends, and that's why he must destroy him at the upcoming would-be pay-per-view. This one wasn't as good as the first one, but it still did a very good job in making me want to see this world title match. It was then another squash match featuring Brian Cage and John Kruse, but I'm going to level with you. I could watch this kind of squash match every single day for the rest of my life. It was like putting a Wolverine, obviously Brian Cage likes that stuff, but it was like putting a Wolverine in there with a mouse and just observing what was going to happen. He absolutely ate him alive. This is getting it up. Taz was the real winner after this though, because he cut a promo and he was so mad and he was so pissed off, I believed every word that he said. And he was talking to Jon Moxley. He's like, where are you, John? Where are you? Why haven't you turned up? You're a coward, you're nothing. And this is what I was saying since the beginning. Now, in the real world, Jon Moxley actually got hit with COVID-19, if you can believe it, so he wasn't able to come, but I like the way AEW worked all this in. Taz then realised this was actually a good thing because his man Brian Cage is so unsafe. If Jon Moxley had turned up, who knows what would have gone down. I still don't believe that Brian Cage is going to win the title, and who knows if we're going to get that match now. We'll have to wait and see, but they planted enough seeds of doubt that I shall invest. We doubled down on the Colt Cabana stuff after this because he was just so made up that he got a win. Brody Lee pounced on him like the Emperor from Star Wars. He was like, yes, feel the emotion, feel it running through your brains, join my cult. Brody then turned his attention to SCU, which Colt was very worried about. He's like, what are you doing? Why have you come up with this? And indeed at Fyter Fest, we're going to get the Dark Order versus SCU. I am very interested to see where this goes. We also got the card for both nights of Fyter Fest over the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to presume you want it. I shall give it to you. Night one is going to be the Jurassic Express versus MJF and Wardlow. We're also going to get Private Party versus Santana and Ortiz. We're going to get Shida versus Penelope Ford for the women's title. We're going to get Cody versus Jake Hager for the TNT title. And we're going to get Umaga and Paige and the Best Friends going at it for the tag team belts. Night two is going to have Nyla Rose in action. We don't know what she's doing just yet. Lance Archer versus Joey Janela. SCU versus the Dark Order. Orange Cassidy versus Chris Jericho. The Young Bucks and FTR taking on the Lucha Brothers, the Butcher and the Blade. Blade, and of course Jon Moxley versus Brian Cage for that badass big world title. Now the only comment I want to make on this is that AEW was showing graphics for each match, and I had to rewind and count them because I noticed so many people were doing this. You know, that classic wrestling screaming pose, and the total number was 17. 17 screaming people. We were also getting more notes from Baker throughout all of this, and one of them just said, Big Swole is the biggest piece of trash. So Big Swole went and got a rubbish bin and poured the trash over Britt Baker's head. I love it. I don't know why, but I do. It was then Matt Hardy versus Santana next, and if you're wondering why it wasn't Matt Hardy versus Sammy Guevara because you somehow missed the news, well, Sammy was suspended from AEW after making some truly horrible comments about Sasha Banks. All I am going to say about it is that I thought everyone involved here handled this pretty much as well as they could. My main hope is that we can grow from this and learn and educate ourselves and just be better people. The match was fine too, nothing really to write home about, and as I've said before, if I did do that, my parents would just be like, why has he sent us this? This doesn't make any sense. And of course, Ortiz was on the outside, just being a massive goofball. He distracted the referee at one point, and as a quick aside, if AEW does keep doing this, at least one occasion, it has to end in a DQ. It just does. I'm not going to do anything about it now, but no, I've got my eye on it. It's been noted. This also ended with kinda one of the most devastating moves in all of sports entertainment, because Santana thought he had the win. He went to pin Matt Hardy in like a roll-up position, but Matt Hardy reversed that, and Santana was so surprised, and this was so devastating, Hardy was able to get the win. Now, for those people that go nuts and shout, why don't you have a roll-up counter for AEW? It's because they don't overdo it. WWE and AEW are different companies. You judge them on their own merits, not by what the other people are doing. That would be absolutely bonkers. You just need to calm down. If it does go crazy, I promise you, we'll have a counter, but for now, no. Anyway, the main reason for this was to set up Santana and Ortiz taking on Private Party. Of course, that's going down at Fyter Fest. So afterwards, Private Party came out and tried to save Matt Hardy, even though he'd been beaten up pretty badly by these Inner Circle chaps. Shib. It was another segment that did do what it had to do though, so it can get it up. Our main event angle for the evening was everything between Chris Jericho and Orange Cassidy, and I think I kind of mean this, although once again I'm probably exaggerating. I think in many ways this was perfect. I don't think they could have done any better in terms of getting across who Orange Cassidy is. It is getting it up. Because Jericho's whole point was that Orange Cassidy is just a massive joke, and a joke that gets worse and worse the more you hear it. He compared him to the how did the chicken cross the road joke, and of course the answer is to get to the other side. It's kind of amusing at first, but when you hear it time and time again, you're like, well, this is just crap. Why are we even here to begin with? That's Orange Cassidy, according to Le Champion. He also called him out for all those weak kicks that he does and said, look, Orange, if you do that to me at Fyter Fest, I am just going to break you and ruin you, and I'll beat you in 30 seconds, and that's the whole point. Orange Cassidy doesn't do these kicks. He thinks they're really going to hurt. He does it to try and get under the skin of his opponent, and clearly that's working here, which it doubly did when Orange Cassidy took the mic from Chris Jericho, put it on the floor, and he started doing his kicks. Not to hurt Chris Jericho, but to try again to get under his skin. This is kind of the equivalent, I know you're going to go nuts, it's kind of the equivalent of Austin flipping you off. Why do you think he flipped you off? This is the same. Jericho couldn't handle this at all, so he took Orange Cassidy's Ray-Bans and he broke them, and that was that. The brawl was on, and once again we just established what Orange Cassidy is all about, because as soon as his back was against the wall, as soon as he had been pissed off, he had fire, he had aggression, and at one point he was actually kicking Jericho's ass until Jericho got hold of a camera and chucked it into Cassidy's face. All of this brawling meant Cassidy emerged at one point with blood all over his face, and he looked like an absolute badass, and it basically finished when they were brawling in the seats of the venue, and Cassidy ran at him and gave him a massive punch. It meant Orange was standing tall as the show ended, and I just can't believe we're getting this match, and I can't believe I'm so invested as I am. I do think Chris Jericho will win, but I also think he's got a plan up his sleeve, and in a week's time or 2 weeks' time, whenever the hell it's done, we are going to be talking about it for a long time to come. Also, how the hell is this a thing? I know I say every week, how are we getting Chris Jericho, former WWE champion, against Orange Cassidy? I love 2020 wrestling. Kinda. There's a lot of bad as well. This was good. Which means the go-home show for Fyter Fest is now in the books, and as you probably figured out, I actually thought this was one of the best shows that AEW has done in some time. When they have a focus, they just seem to get all the momentum in the world. Overall, is getting it up. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about this show. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Head over to WhatCulture.com and read yourself some wrestling articles. Follow WhatCulture on Twitter, WhatCulture WWE, and watch more videos here on WhatCulture Wrestling. My name is Simon for WhatCulture, also known as Mr. Ups and Downs. Thanks for joining me, and you do know we'll be here later to do all the Fyter Fest upping and downing. I am pumped.